What's going on? Welcome to ednews.com. It's your host, EJ Carrion, and today we have an exciting guest, Christopher Hoang, Assistant Principal at Alta Vista Innovation High School. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, EJ. Absolutely love what you're doing. Love all the information you bring. I just watched the one on the PSLF, and I'm like, oh, that's right. I need to do this just because there's so much information and people aren't given the opportunity to connect and keep up on all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I would love to know, you had an article in EdSurge about how alternative education is really not being top of mind or discussed during this conversation of what's all going through the last 2 years. Can you kind of give us context of your experience in alternative education and what your school looks like?
Yeah, so I've actually been in education for over 15 years now, 10 of which was in an alternative ed setting, specifically independent study. And independent study is a little bit more unique in that we do work with students that are 7th through 12th grade, but it's all dependent on the student, their parents, and their goals. So a lot of it falls on the student and the parents, with the teachers there as mentors and guides to support the students and teach them what they need to know to be successful through the curriculum. So our students don't have to come to school 5 days a week. They're allowed to come to 5 if they want to come, but for the most part, the minimum requirement for our student is at least twice a week to check in with the teachers, to work with the teachers. If they want to participate in sports, clubs, any of that stuff, they're welcome to come more frequently. And it alleviates that option for a lot of our students where they have to pick between having a job versus going to school, because some of our students are a little bit older, especially we have a good chunk that are 18 to 22 years of age that, they didn't finish school in the traditional idea of 4 years. So they're like, okay, look, I didn't do it in 4 years, but I'm working towards it. Can you help me out? Can you give me the time and patience? And we work with them and like, okay, let's get you your high school diploma and we'll work on your time, but we got to make sure you get done.
And so kind of, I have kind of your article here. I'm going to try to take another step of this. So we have your article here. The pandemic left us looking for answers. We found them in our alternative education model. Why is that? And can you kind of give a synopsis of your kind of point of view here about the opportunity that we all can learn from alternative education?
Yeah. So as it stands right now, I mean, every teaching program in the nation, every teaching program in the world, how often do they teach you how to teach an alternative ed? I didn't even understand alternative until I actually found a job in one. I mean, traditionally we get our credential program, but we're taught the pedagogy, the methodology of a traditional comprehensive classroom. And we're not being taught, hey, one size does not fit all. We preach it, but even then, you look at the way education's been over the past, 100 odd years, it's still four walls, a bunch of tables, a teacher in the front. It hasn't changed. We might have tweaked a bit where it's like, oh, the kids are now sitting in circles, but there's still a teacher at the front. And so with alternative ed, one of the things I've discovered and just working in this field, you're able to build the connections a little bit better with the students, and you can actually talk to them to see what their goals are specifically. And our model is a little bit more unique in that the students stay with one teacher their entire high school career. So that way they can build that relationship and have that motivator. And then they still work with other teachers, but they have one quote unquote homeroom teacher that takes care of all their basic needs, that contacts them, that grades, that submits all reports. So if you want to think elementary school kind of model, it's I have one teacher that's going to take care of me, but this teacher is going to take care of me for 4 years or whenever I finish graduating. And then I have all these support services in the other math, history, science, English teachers, the tutors, the paraeducators to support me as I progress through. And I think one of the biggest things I've noticed is one size really doesn't fit all. And a lot of our students are adapting and changing. And personally, I feel like education is slower to adjust than it should, because we're still teaching, like there are still teachers that'll say, I remember growing up, it's like, why do you need a calculator? You're never going to need a calculator. You won't always have one with you. And now, lo and behold, we all have cell phones. So we always have a calculator on us. It's like we need to adjust the mindset of how to work with our students and empower them to want to learn. And our alternative ed model, look, you know what you need to do. I mean, all my research, my doctoral research was behind high school dropouts and why they come back, and talking to all these kids are like, we know a high school diploma is important. We want one for career advancement. We want one for, going to college. We want one for whatever reason. It's just, that's not our priority right now, because I have a kid to take care of, or I'm being bullied at school and I get anxiety coming to school, or I have to work to help my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to alleviate all that and go back to, hey, let's look at Maslow's hierarchy. What do we need to provide for you? Let's focus on your basic needs. If you don't feel like you're being taken care of, if you feel like school just wants you to be going, so it's like, what, we're pushing you to go to school as opposed to making it your choice, how likely you're going to want to do something. I remember me being a high school kid, is like, if my teacher's like, you need to come 5 days a week because of X, Y, and Z, I'm like, why are you telling me this? I know this.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to make the choice if I want to come 5 days a week or not. So we want to empower students, and that's what our model is built around. It's empowering those students so that they can make that choice, as opposed to someone telling them it's a choice or it's a forced choice.
Yeah. Now, how many students do you think go to general education route, usually through their high school education? But then also, while you answer that, if you're going to give me a kind of a guesstimate, what do you see now needs to be the reaction in schools on top of that? Does that number need to look different?
I think so. I think my guesstimate, it's probably about 95% of all students will go to a traditional route. I mean, if you go to the generic, or any parent, any common person, it's like, hey, do you know what alt ed is? I'm going to say 99% will say no, right? It's even now, it's like, if I tell them, hey, alternative ed includes online learning, or even the juvenile halls and camps, continuation schools are independent, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And I think it does need to change. And the pandemic proved to us it needs to change, because the moment we shifted to, hey, everyone, you're going to learn at home, we're going to remote learning, that's great and all, but technology proved to be the counter barrier, or a barrier, not counter, a barrier to our students, because broadband wasn't easily accessible. I was watching a lot of news clips or even social media, and I remember seeing 2 kids sitting outside a Taco Bell just to siphon their internet so that they could be in school. So that's a huge barrier. The other thing is, a lot of our students have siblings in school. So how do you expect Johnny to be able to be in class while he's also helping his younger sister Susie, pay attention and log in and such, and maybe they don't have the bandwidth, and then it becomes a huger issue where, how do we make sure our kids are learning if Johnny's taking care of Susie, or Susie focusing on something else, and is learning really happening? I think education does need to tweak a bit. I think we need to give students more of an incentive for their choice. I'm very much about innovation and providing students different opportunities, regardless of the educational model. But from what we've seen in this pandemic, a lot of students did thrive with the remote learning. A lot of them did thrive where they only had to check in once a week with their teachers. They got all their work done, and some other students didn't thrive, and that's okay. But we do need to tweak the model. We need to provide more options for our students, because as it stands in my state in California right now, just reading through the news, reading through the articles, hybrid learning is not an option for a lot of our traditional comprehensive school, which blows my mind when it works so well for so many different students. Or online learning is not an option now for some of those students, which still, again, blows my mind. Like, if it's working for the kids, why aren't we using it?
Yeah.
Like, let's not put up this barrier saying because of X, Y, Z, they can't do it. We need them in their seats because they learn better. It's like, okay, that works for what? Maybe a majority of our students, that seat-based learning works, but then what about the ones it does not work for?
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of kind of the idea of attendance and getting paid by attendance. So how does that work for you guys? If like being at campus is not necessary, a requirement 5 days a week.
Yeah. So we're actually paid based on students submitting work. So if it's for us, is they need to have a C average on their credits or their work. So what we do is we take a semester's work of curriculum. So let's say US history first semester. So US history A, it's about 5 months of curriculum designed into it. So what we do is we break up the semester's worth and turn them into what we call 5 packets. So each packet equals 1 credit. You're in all 5 credits, you get a semester's grade, right? And so we get paid based on students actually submitting work and earning a C or better. So if they're going to do US history, they need to submit that US history packet to us. We grade it, we work with them. If it's not passing, we say, hey, We need to
Yeah.
come back. I need you to come here. Let's look at it, see what's going on, because I do want you to be successful and we want you to learn. You can't just copy and paste, or you can't just do X,
Yeah.
Y, Z. Come back, let's work on it so we can make sure you
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah. I want to know, how's the overall culture does this allow for teachers? Because I know a big part of today is also just like staff shortages. And I think everything around the problem today is just around people wanting more control of their time and more flexibility, from a
Yeah.
student to a teacher. And
Yep.
so, how does this work with your teachers?
You know what? Our teachers absolutely love this model because I trust teachers going to teach. I mean, I hired teachers that are smarter than me, that are more engaged than me. They know this stuff, and I'm going to trust that they're going to do the best with our students. And so, what some of my teachers do is some will have their own kids, some will have someone they're taking care of at home. And so, we gave them that flexibility. Like, look, we're required to provide X instructional minutes a day. How you want to do those X instructional minutes are up to you. What works best for you, what works best for your students. Just let me know what you're going to do so I can support you. So if you want to work, I think I had one teacher working from 8 to 11, just because some kids work really well in the morning. And then after 11, she herself would take care of her daughter, make sure her daughter is okay. And then a lot of the other kids like, look, can you work with me once my parents get back from home? And then she would log in from 6 to 9 at night and then some to help those
So
students
amazing.
learn,
Yeah, that's
you
so
know?
amazing. Yeah. Um, can we dive in as well into um, you kind of talked about in the article kind of the three priorities.
Yeah.
How do you guys get to those priorities, and um, yeah, and just kind of how is it implemented in school? I love some of the stuff, but I don't want to give it all away and let you
Okay.
kind of do it.
Yeah, so we all know all our students have academic needs. That's like a given. When they're in school, it's an academic need. We know they all have social mental needs, and the pandemic showed that even more.
Hmm.
I think the third need that most families and schools and teachers understand, but they don't prioritize, is financial need. And so, as a school, what we do is we do take an inventory of our students. We do take a survey. We talk to them. We see what's going on, and I want to say 99% of our kids look. They'll come up to me and say, "Hey, Mister or Chris, I need help finding a job. My parents, they're struggling right now. I want to focus on working. I know I'm 16. How do I get a work permit so I can actually help the family out?" Some might be adults, and same thing is like, hey, I want to help my kid. I have a kid to raise. I want to make sure he's taken care of. How can I get a job? So we do that. That was one of the inventory. And what we did too, as part of this inventory, is we created a small group of educators, stakeholders. Like, so we have a workshop our WEO partnership, a Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act partnership, who helps our students find jobs, build their resumes up, gets paid basically for 120 hours at $15 an hour, and with the option of signing on board longer with whatever organization they're at with at the time. Uh,
So great.
Students and parents. So we tried to create a community of stakeholders. I mean, the LCCF, LCFF, the LCAP, all that was about bringing stakeholders together and getting
Yeah.
them to have input on the direction of our school. And so we did that. And the first and foremost priority that shot up, academics bounced to the very bottom during the pandemic, obviously,
Hmm.
because everywhere in the world, people were being, hey, you
Hmm.
can't work because we're shut down. Finances came up first. And then from the finance aspect, you now have that stress is like, do I have a place to stay? Do I have a place to eat? Like, what's going on? So the social, emotional, and mental health issue arose, and then academics became last. So what we did is we did a reverse order of everything. We showed the kids we cared about them. We showed them, hey, we're here to help you. We want to make sure you're okay, but let's take care of your basic needs first. And so one of the things we did do is we talked to a lot of the kids to see what they were doing, and lo and behold, every kid's on social media, and TikTok blew
Yeah.
up during the pandemic. I think there are so many videos, and then about kids like different dances, different ways to cook, whatnot, that just blew up. And so talking to kids are like, is there a way we can make money with TikTok? Or is there a way we can make money with social media? And so we're like, you know what? Why not? So we talked to our Wheel partnership, and they're like, yeah, we can pay the kids to do this stuff. So what we end up doing is our career and technical education teachers in media, arts,
Yeah.
and entertainment worked with kids remotely, taught them how to brand themselves. So he's teaching them, hey, branding is everything. How you put out the image, like the professionalism, what you want to do, find a niche that works for you.
Hmm.
And our students were like, they were amazed because they're like, hey, this is what we want to do. Is we want to make videos and get paid for it. So what we did, we gave them that opportunity where not only did we help them create videos on TikTok, we taught them how to use the filters, we taught them how to use music in the background, taught them the different things and how to use hashtags to get the most views. And the students were creating videos for our school, and they were doing like marketing or for our school, or if not marketing, they were doing different videos on how to focus on schoolwork, what you can do at the school, like different ways to stay engaged during this pandemic. And so as we did that, the kids were basically hired as intern by us through our Wheel partnership, and they were making $15 an hour. And we're providing them this opportunity to build a skill set that they have, but learning how to monetize it.
Yeah.
And they loved it. And I think that helped us create buy-in.
Yeah. And I think why I love the article so much and why we reached out was there's so much here that sounds so new to me in the sense of, I mean, I guess not necessarily fully new, but it's happening where a teacher's able to go from 9 to 11, go do what they have to do, come back and support kids after. Like that power of flexibility, I think, is the number one thing we hear about why teachers are trying to find different pathways, is because lack of flexibility, where a lot of other professions allow that flexibility. Yep. And then the next big thing is now you're talking about paying kids to work and work on school projects, yep. Which, I feel like, we never set that up as well. I want to ask you, like, if you were able to kind of sit down with, Miguel Cardona or the federal government, like, we need to build a campaign of future schools, what would you say, and what would be some key points that you would think school need to turn to in order to be exciting for kids, relevant for kids, sustainable for teachers, and positive for economic development? You said you talked about it, and you didn't say it exactly how you said it in an article, but financial, mental health, and academics. And when you think about all three of those, it's just really exciting to see how you guys are doing it. The TikTok stuff is great. So, what's your thoughts on what you would share with the federal government on if you were doing a campaign for Alta Vista?
I think first and foremost to the federal government and to all the states is we need to change the way instructional minutes are done. Mm. The moment we change instructional minutes is the moment that flexibility for everything else comes out. Because right now, I think we're required to do 180 days of schooling, X amount of minutes. But why does it have to be the same everywhere? Give the schools or the community the flexibility to adjust those instructional minutes, because that's how we do it here. It's just because it says you need X amount of minutes in one school day. Why do we have to do? I think now a lot of schools are doing 8:30 to 2:30, 8:30 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. Like, why do we have to do that? Let's fix that. Let's work with, whether it's the teachers union, whether it's the paraprofessional union, work with the other partners, the other stakeholders, and let's look at adjusting the instructional minutes. And we need to change the way ADA is funded for students in school. Having students just have their butts in seats is counterproductive. Like, how much learning is really happening if my kid has to show up? And right now, even now with the current pandemic, where my daughter missed 10 days of school because she did test positive for COVID-19. She was half vaccinated, tested positive, had to stay quarantined for 10 days. Is like how much learning was happening during this time. And I was grateful because my daughter's school gave us basically 2 weeks worth of work to keep her caught up, as essentially independent study is what she was given to do this stuff. I'm like, so let's be flexible with our students. Let's meet their needs, continue to reinforce a workforce innovation opportunity act that Obama re-upped when he was in office, and get more schools involved in this, because if our students can get jobs, it'll help a lot more. And I think the biggest thing I would love for the federal government to do, and I would love for the states to do, is stop putting such a huge emphasis on going straight to a 4-year college.
Yeah.
There are enough vocational schools, trade school, even the military or workforce, where let the kids find their passion, let them go that way. And let's not make them feel like they're lower class citizens or second class citizens because they didn't go to a 4-year college.
Yeah. And you, and I feel like you said it so greatly. And you talked about that being a part of why we call it alternative school, and you mentioned how people feel second class for even going to alternative school. Kind of talk about language and the importance that is for students and their education.
Yeah, so I know one of the terms that in California we've changed recently is we went from at risk youth to at promise youth. And that one term makes it sound so much better because if you're at risk, what am I at risk at? We don't use it for teachers that are underperforming. We don't say you're an at risk teacher, right? Rather, we're like, hey, you're an at promise student. You have the potential. Let's make sure you live up to that potential. And I think we need to change that language to be more positive. And that's the same with education. We don't need to say this is alternative ed. We just say this is education in general, just a different way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, Christopher, thank you for coming on ednews.com and being one of our first kind of guests on the show. And we will have this article pinged to the description. Thank you so much for your time, and really glad that you do the work for your students.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the time. Appreciate what you're doing, man. Take care.
Take care.